Wolfpack, what is going on? It's your boy, the Wolf of Roto Street, here of the RotoStreetJournal.com, where we breed and feed fantasy wolves. And I'm here with your Week 12 Fantasy Football Recap Show. We're going to go over all your risers, your fallers, the early waiver wire, any injuries you need to know. Because, as always, you don't want to move ahead to the next week without learning the crucial fantasy football takeaways, the lessons that need to happen. So come on in, settle on in. If you're listening to the podcast, Fantasy Fullback Dive, where we pave your path to 2019 titles. Great to have you on the audio. Feel free to come and join us every Monday right around 7 p.m. Eastern Time for the live show. Would love to have some interactions with the usuals, like we got Daniel Howland, great to see you, Duckworth, a bunch of you guys coming on in. Any comments, likes, and of course any shares, always appreciated. Let me know, air out any grievances from Sunday that you need to, confess any fantasy sins you or me may have committed. Let us know how we can help you moving forward into Week 13, last week before the fantasy football playoffs. Thanks again so much, guys, for tuning in. Let's get to the risers right now. Tunes, great to see you. Brandy, welcome to the show. Great so much. Every Monday, great to see you guys. So comment on in how I can help you out. And until then, I'm going to cover all these 6 risers real quick. We're starting with Leonard Fournette tonight. Whew. This guy has made us look wrong as ever. Denny Jennings will cover that in a second. But Leonard Fournette, what an absolute monster. Gets 97 yards rushing, 2 scores on 24 carries, and then most importantly, 9 catches, 62 yards on a whopping 12 targets. What does this tell us? The dude is completely game flow proof. Yes, we always knew he had some receiving chops and was kind of underutilized in that area. But bam, a career high 33 touches, no substitutions, no matter how down they got. Ultimately, just an incredible game to know this dude is the pinnacle, the definition, right alongside those 3-down horses that just don't ever come off the field. We didn't know Fournette was quite at that level. This game confirms it in emphatic fashion. You got to love Fournette moving forward. A fair schedule, nothing too easy, nothing too hard. That kind of just middle ground here for Fournette. Coming down the stretch, a locked-in RB1, a top 10 overall. If I was drafting today, you'd have to have him right there in your first round. Despite the injury risk, this guy is a monster. Right after him, returning this week, and what an emphatic fashion he came back, Will Fuller. A whopping 7 catches on 11 targets, 140 yards and a score in that Week 12 win for the Colts on Thursday Night Football. More so beyond just those stats, and again, great stats, always illustrating the guy's been a top 10 wide receiver in nearly half of his active games. We know Fuller has that type of big play explosiveness, but the way that entire passing game looks when he's out there, Deshaun Watson averages nearly a touchdown more fantasy points per game when Fuller is out there than when he's not. And then obviously DeAndre Hopkins ripping off 2 touchdowns, sees a significant drop in targets, but ultimately the quality of those targets go up so much when you got a guy like Will Fuller stretching the field alongside you. So you got to be very encouraged as a Hopkins owner, as a Fuller owner, as a Watson owner, how great this offense looked. Now they got New England next week, a shy away kind of matchup if you can avoid using your Texans. Denver right after, not the best of matchups either, but then Tennessee and Tampa Bay, weeks 15 and 16, especially that 16 juicy matchup against the Bucs. A great spot for all your Texans in those last 2 weeks. You got to weather these next 2 though. Right after them, and maybe the most important takeaway of the week, Jonathan Williams for the Colts. Now, we were projecting, as were most sites, a 3-headed committee. Wilkins was coming back. Frank Reich had talked about let's going to split those early down reps. Nyheim Hines going to come in on 3rd downs. Doesn't seem all that appealing, but Jonathan Williams says, fuck your committee, Mr. Reich. 26 whopping carries, 3 catches as well, 29 touches. Insanity for 121 total yards and a score. Almost 20 fantasy points in half PPR settings. Unbelievable effort for Jonathan Williams, and clear cut that immediate fill-in for Marlon Mack. It's not a committee. We saw the snaps completely favor Mr. Williams here. 45 snaps, 67%, as compared to 22 for Hines. That was 33%. A clear-cut, early down, pass-catching role. Jordan Wilkins, meanwhile, 0 touches, 1 snap total. This is the furthest thing from a committee. It's right into that Marlon Mack-style role. And now Williams isn't anything special. Didn't look like he's going to light any worlds on fire, but this type of volume behind this offensive line is going to be meaningful. Granted, I got to preface it, The Tennessee Titans next week, a nice matchup, 14th to the running back in terms of points allowed, but then Tampa Bay and New Orleans are both bottom 3 matchups before Carolina in Week 16. You got to imagine by Week 16, Marlon Mack is back, so you might only have another real 1 week of usability here, but still, Williams, the clear-cut focal point in that backfield with Marlon Mack out. Continue to get your questions in, guys. I'm going to hit all those. Got 13 coming in so far. I appreciate it. Keep them coming. I'm going to run through the rest of this menu real quick. DJ Moore, speaking of guys just absolutely lighting the world on fire, had seen double-digit targets, didn't see double-digit targets this week, but still has his best professional day of his career. 126 yards on 6 catches, that's 6 of 9 targets, and hauls in not 1 but 2 touchdowns for a monstrous over 30-point day for DJ Moore. More so than just the final stats, the way he accumulated them. He was getting open at will, short, intermediate, deep game, running the entire route tree, looking more polished than we've ever seen him, making contested touchdown grabs. He looked like a complete number 1 wide receiver. He's been getting that number 1 wide receiver volume, and now he puts it all together with the 2 scores, with the high yardage. The guy is a monster, and now gets Washington, Atlanta, Seattle, and Indy. None of those threatening defenses for the stretch run schedule here. Again, 3 straight games over 100 yards now for DJ Moore. It's clear cut. This is a Christian McCaffrey and DJ Moore offense, and maybe Samuel picks up a couple scraps here and there, but this is the DJ Moore show, folks, in terms of wide receivers, and he has got to be a top 15 guy for the rest of season almost every single week. Other than that, George Kittle looking fully healthy, the biggest takeaway here. Despite playing with broken bones, still rips up 129 yards score, catching in all 6 of his targets. Yes, it came against the Packers team, giving up the 4th most points to tight ends, a juicy upon all juicy matchups, but still, 61-yard touchdown bursting through the defense. I get that it could flare up. I get he could get knocked out at any point, even at under 100%, though. This guy is a monster. He's still got top-end speed for the position and is still an every week top 2 or 3 tight end, no matter who he is playing. And the matchups aren't fantastic. Baltimore next week, 30th against tight ends, so really limiting the position. New Orleans 24th, Atlanta 17th, and the Rams 22nd. But that doesn't really matter when you're as talented as Kittle. He should be able to still get it done each and every week. And last but not least, at any stretch of the imagination, that is your Cleveland Browns. Baker Mayfield finally coming to life, looking like the quarterback we were envisioning this entire year for the kid. Over 300 yards, 3 TDs, nearly all of them coming in the first half, which was insane. But Jarvis Landry, that revenge game, even more so impressive. Over 10 catches, 140 yards, 2 scores, just lighting his old team up on fire there. So love the Landry performance, love the Baker Mayfield, even OBJ finally getting involved for nearly 100 yards and a TD. Yes, this all came against the Dolphins, though, so we got to take it with a little bit of a grain of salt. The worst team, DVOA, in terms of defensive efficiency against all positions. Still, though, the offense is humming. They don't have a brutal schedule coming up. This was the easiest matchup on the calendar, but whereas it was one of the most difficult calendars to start the first half of the year, they've got Pittsburgh giving up the 23rd most points to QBs, then Cincy, the 4th most, Arizona, the most, and then Baltimore, Week 16. You'll have to scrap your Browns by then, but especially Weeks 14 and 15 here, Cincy and Arizona, a definite streaming spot here for Baker Mayfield. For your wide receivers, you keep Landry rolling, you keep Odell rolling, and then Nick Chubb still dominating. Only 60% of the snaps this week after 81% last week. They just didn't need him, and he still had over 26 fantasy points. Kareem Hunt also finding the end zone. These two are coexisting quite well. Both of them becoming low. High-end RB1 for Chubb and mid-range RB2 for Hunt. They're coexisting so well. So great stuff from the Browns, and you got to feel decent about them moving forward for the rest of the season. Let me show you what's coming up on our followers, but I'm going to hit all the questions we've got so far. Keep them coming in. We got 18 to cover here. Ryan and Jones screwed me hard, praying Ingram and Evan fall flat on their faces. How many you got to avoid, Tunes? Let me know. I truly hope they fall on their faces for you. No hangover, Denny. That is certainly the furthest thing from the truth. I am a walking corpse. What an absolutely disgusting, freezing cold game. I think my soul no longer exists, but I am here doing the best I can. Probably will pass out in about 30 minutes upon hanging this up. Fat Bowl, season-long big board, and to bed I go. Dylan Adams, what's going on, brother? Darnold, Godwin, Ertz, and Fournette up 140 as Lamar. That is a very solid week. Remind me to put your team in on DraftKings next week, my friend. Great stuff right there. Left Tannehill, Jamal Williams, and Cobb on the bench. You couldn't have put in Tannehill over Ryan, though, Tunes. Like, no worries on that one. And Aaron Jones, like, you're not going to play Cobb over him. So, going forward, pick roll with Chark or Metcalf. I'm going to go with DJ Chark there. I get that he had a down week, but the schedule is so appealing, and he's still seeing a ton of volume. I get the boom and bust nature has been brutal, but Metcalf, whereas you're getting a clear-cut number 1 in Chark, Metcalf's the number 2, sometimes even number 3 option when Hollister's getting involved. So Howland, I'm going DJ Chark there. Picked up Tannehill, 39 points. Unbelievable, the 2 rushing touchdowns. We're going to get there in a little bit. Denny Jennings, what the heck is up with Kamara? Oh, great question. He is not on our followers list, as you can see here. We're going to get to this after your question and comment. But yeah, the touchdowns aren't there. They're getting Latavius Murray very active in the red zone. I did like that Sean Payton at halftime said, we're feeding Kamara. They came out and did it. He did get to his 20 touches. Bigger days are coming, but he doesn't look quite as slippery, quite as explosive as his usual self. And those of you tuned in, any likes, comments, shares, especially 5 likes, come on. Give us a little bit of a bump here. Appreciate any likes. Especially appreciate if you can drop this into any fantasy football groups. We've had huge growth, huge success because of the support of you guys throughout this season. We got a couple more weeks left to crush it here. So appreciate it. Again, any likes you can toss in on us. Any more questions, comments, and any shares especially. It means the world, guys. So thanks for that. Let's get to your fallers here, because Kamara could potentially be one. I think he's going to get everything right here. But who could be a locked-in top 5 running back just a couple weeks ago and looking a lot shakier coming out of this week? And that's Chris Carson. I did tell you to sell high only 3-4 weeks ago with a brutal upcoming schedule and with some injury concerns, and most concerning, which we saw pop up this week, yet again rearing its ugly head, the fumbling concerns for Chris Carson. Puts it on the ground in back-to-back plays, loses the second one to the Eagles, and that's after accumulating a meager 26 pathetic yards in 31 through the air, 4 catches. But most concerning of all, not that pathetic stat line, but after fumbling, it almost became exclusively the Rashad Penny show. And how did he respond? Even more concerning. 14 carries, nearly 130 yards, 129, and a score on the ground with some beastly runs. And this is coming against one of the better run defenses in the league. Penny looked like he had another gear we hadn't seen in his professional career here. And right after the game, Pete Carroll saying there's no reason to not get Penny back in there for Week 13. He says Carson's a guy that's a big part of what we do, and we'll do everything we can for him. But competition is a beautiful thing, so there's no reason not to get Penny back in there. We'll get those guys hammering away. Dreaded committee is so it sounds. Yes, Carson stuck to his guy. Pete Carroll stuck to his guy Carson in other predicaments, in other fumbling situations. But man, something about this one just feels a little bit off. They got a tough schedule of these next couple before Carolina and then Arizona, weeks 15, 16. So a nice stretch run if someone does emerge. But you have to feel a little bit more questionable with Chris Carson's stock moving forward here. After him, we got some fallers on the Cowboys side of things. That's Dak and Cooper. Granted, you don't want to overreact. It was coming against the Patriots, one of the toughest possible matchups you can have, limiting wide receivers and quarterbacks to the fewest points per game. But still, hideous. 212 yards, 0 scores, and interception for Dak, under 8 fantasy points in almost every league. And Amari Cooper just completely blanked on the day. Doesn't catch a single one of his 2 targets for a nice goose egg to ruin your lineup. And why I wanted to bring these guys up, I get how explosive they've been all year. I get it's been one of the league-winning combos. But the schedule isn't all that much easier for these next 3 weeks. You got Buffalo giving up the 29th to quarterbacks, 30th to wide receivers. You're getting the Chicago Bears giving up the 30th points to wide receivers and 25th to quarterbacks. And then the Rams limiting both positions to 25th most points right there. So no single easy matchups left on this calendar for your Cowboys. We did, in fact, our guy Sean Keegan recommended you guys sell high on your Cowboys before your trade deadline goes. And this was an illustration that this game, passing game, can be shut down. It was the worst possible weather, the worst possible matchup. I think this will be the worst game we see from either of these two. But in particular, especially with Cooper, I think that floor is a little bit shakier than what you might have thought coming into week 2, which is definitely a little sketchy. Continue to get those questions in, guys. I want to run through these fallers, and then I'll be there with you. Another offense definitely looking sketchy for the third straight week. That's Aaron Rodgers and his Packers. He goes for under 200 yards yet again. Oh my God, Aaron Rodgers fucking sucks. 104 yards and a TD. That now makes an average of 160 yards and 2 scores across his last 3 games. He managed a whopping 3.2 yards per attempt. Oh, God, that is hideous, Aaron Rodgers. You meager little weasel. Absolutely pathetic. Tanking this offense, and that's what the rub was all year. We've seen like 2 blow-ups, and he's been under 15 points in like 80% of his games right now. The LaFleur balance it out, build the marriage of the run in the receiving games. Has been all about establishing the run. And speaking of that, Aaron Jones sucked too, getting tanked by this Aaron Rodgers patheticness. He has 13 carries for 38 yards, no receiving scores, no touchdowns for a guy that came into the league leading all running backs in the position for touchdowns here. Gets out-touched by Jamal Williams. 18 touches, 10 carries, 8 catches for Williams, who racks up another decent day here. 90 total yards, solid game flow for him. It just reminds you Aaron Jones is not an every down featured back. We talked about Leonard Fournette, why he's a big riser. He is game flow proof. That's not the case with Aaron Jones. If they get down early, it's going to become a Williams, the better pass protector, better receiver. It's going to become a Williams-style game. And with the way Rodgers is playing these days, it's looking pretty hideous. Granted, these next couple weeks, it's looking like a good, nice get-right schedule. At least for weeks 13 and 14, you got the Giants and then the Redskins. So both of those bottom half in terms of points allowed. You got Chicago week 15 and Minnesota week 16. So a tough, final 2 weeks if you make it to your semis and ultimate playoffs. But still, good get-right smash spots for these two. It just reminds you of how low the floor is for both Rodgers, for both Jones, while this offense struggles. Another guy really struggling these last few weeks, that's Darren Waller. After becoming a every down force every single week, you're putting Waller in, you're not thinking twice. He's been the tight end 13, tight end 22, tight end 23, and tight end 10 over these last 4 weeks since Darryl Williams returned. He had 3 catches, 41 scoreless yards, just another meh day for our guy Darren Waller here. And you no longer can really lump him up there, whereas a couple weeks ago with the Kittles, with the Andrews, with those every down horses at the tight end position, Waller just seems to be slipping much closer to the Gerald Everett's, the boom-bust style tier, the Ryan Griffins. Sure, he'll spearhead that tier, and he's got some decent matchups with Kansas City, Tennessee, Jacksonville on the radar here, so he should be able to get right, especially with Renfro also going down, which we'll talk about. That middle of the field should belong exclusively to Waller, so I do think he rebounds nicely. It's just concerning he's no longer that locked in, get him in your lineup, set and forget style option that we had become accustomed to. And speaking of the crap, 49ers, their number one's completely useless for a third week in a row. That number one's I'm talking about, Tevin Coleman, gets 11 pathetic carries for a pathetic 39 yards. Does get a score on the ground, so not completely useless. But this was a blow-up style spot against the Packers. This team gave up the 5th most points on the ground. It was all set up for this guy without Breida in there again to go for 100 for 2 scores to really remind us of that humongous ceiling we saw only a few handful of weeks ago when he had 4 touchdowns. Just didn't exist, didn't come out yet again. Just a meager floor, a meager ceiling. Not looking great for Coleman. Mostert outplayed this guy on the ground. And speaking of getting outplayed, Emmanuel Sanders, another dud. 1 catch for 15 yards. Is he a decoy? Is he healthy? Can you actually put him out there in your lineups? I don't know, because for sure it seems like now that Deebo Samuel's that top guy for Jimmy Garoppolo, other than, of course, George Kittle. But at wide receiver, Deebo gets 50 yards, a score, continuing to look like that big play threat, continuing to be a monster after the catch. If I had to weigh my options between the two, to me, Deebo's the one that looks healthy and a lot clearer, in my opinion. And last but not least, in terms of fallers, that's Jalen Samuels. He once seemed to own that extremely invaluable role as the James Conner handcuff. Conner's made it through exactly 2 games without getting knocked out. So you got a high risk back in a great workhorse style role. That handcuff is generally one of the top options, but Samuels no longer seems to be that guy. Gets just 2 pathetic carries for 6 yards and gets his usual receiving workload, 3 targets, 3 catches, 26 yards. Oh, God, that was hideous. Against the Cincinnati Bengals, no less, giving up the 4th most points to the position. This guy gets nothing going on the ground. We're going to hit the waiver wire in a second with the guy that you should be going all in to get right now in case this Conner injury lingers. But he was out-touched by Benny Snell, 22 touches. Even, Kurth White has 43 rushing yards. Trey Edmunds has 2 carries for 7 yards. All these guys outproduce Samuels on the ground. He's a horrendous running back, getting nothing done. Catches nothing in the receiving game this week. So ultimately, whereas you thought you had yourself handcuff gold, it's time to send Jalen Samuels packing to the waiver wire. Alrighty, guys, let's get some of these. My guesses are saving for the playoff run. Responding to Denny, I agree. Could totally be saving up Kamara. But 20 carries is 20 carries, or 20 touches rather. So they are getting him some work. He has to get that explosiveness back, that end zone nose that he's always had. Chark over, Foles, and he have a good connection. I agree with that. Duck. Tennessee doesn't have that stout of a secondary, though. I do not agree with that, especially after losing Butler. I'm not a huge fan of that. Should I worry about... They never fed Mac as much as Williams. It's crazy. I know, Dylan, they did give Mac a couple 20-plus carry days when they're bleeding out the clock. And this wasn't even a game flow style, though, where they were trailing a lot of it. So, Dylan, it was surprising. It was big to see for Williams moving forward for as long as he lasts, especially this week against Tennessee, his best matchup till Week 16. Should I worry about Hollister? Asked Tunes. I mean, the position's such a crapshoot, Tunenberg, that I wouldn't be overly worried. He still is that invaluable attention of Russ Wilson in the red zone, who just missed him on a wide open. He's standing there. All he did is sail it over his head. He could have just lobbed it in there, had all day. So you would have been looking at yet another score for Hollister, his 4th touchdown in 3 weeks, had he caught that. I wouldn't be too concerned. He doesn't have any more bunny matchups really on the schedule, so that's a little annoying. But still, Ed Dixon going to the IR. This is an every down role in an offense that moves the ball quite well and has historically targeted their tight ends very voluminously in that red zone. So no, I wouldn't be overly worried about Hollister. Good question, Tunes. I was so wrong about DJ Moore, says the Duck. No problem separating this level, huh? I wasn't a huge fan either, Duck. I'm with you. And, man, he looks just way more complete than I would have ever thought as a wide receiver. And is clearly that top guy on the team. I remember debating Samuels versus Moore coming into the year. It's DJ Moore. It's not even a question at this point. I got both, fortunately. If I had to pick one, though, it'd be Chark. I totally agree with that. DK has competition with Lockett as well as Gordon. So, if you're dropping one, it's got to be DK for me. Josh Allen or Brissett asks Denny Jennings. Now, is this just for the rest of season? Is this just for this next coming week? I'm not sure who they're facing this 1 week, if it's one or the other the rest of the season. I do like J.A. I like his rushing upside, and I believe he has a pretty easy matchup this week, too. I generally will go with Josh Allen over Brissett. Any chance Tucker's getting negative 6 points? Maybe I should have him play kicker? Seriously, Denny. Even then, how many do you have to miss for him to get to -6? Sorry, brother, but it seems like this one is going down for you, my friend. Samuels makes me completely sick, Jeremiah. I actually benched him. Thank God for Carson, who didn't do much more in his absence. But fuck Jalen Samuels, dude. Blow up spot. I'm in my top 12 running backs. I think I told everyone to play him. What a bag of complete shit. Giuseppe, speaking of that, I would absolutely drop Samuels for Rashad Penny, who's only going to continue getting fed. To me, that actually makes the perfect transition. So, Tunes, we're going to come right back to your comment in a second. Let's hit the waiver wire. Probably the most important part of this show. the most actionable part of it is who can you pick up. Now, we talked about Jalen Samuels being a bag of shit. Thank you, Jeremiah. My words, not yours, but yes, complete horse crap. Benny Snell, the one that you actually might want here, 5% owned and an absolute horse on Sunday. 21 carries for 98 yards, also gets a reception in there for 5 yards, and that ultimately gets him to 103 total yards, 23 touches. Definitely a monstrous workload as compared to just those 5 we mentioned for Jalen Samuels. Now, we don't know what Connor's status is. The rumors are he's likely to get back out there for this matchup coming up against Cleveland. But again, he's made it through exactly 2 whole games out of 11 this season with, I think, like 7 different injuries. He's gotten knocked out with at this point. He is going to miss some more time at this point, folks. And when he does, it seems like Benny Snell is the one to lock into your lineups. Solid schedule moving forward as well for the Pittsburgh Steelers. A nice, easy calendar. A lot of games where they should be projected to win, if not just being tight contests where Benny Snell's game flow should be on point. So I like him starting with the Browns, giving up the 5th most points on the ground, or 6th most, sorry. The Packers are the 5th. I like Benny Snell quite a bit this week, and think if Connor's out again, Snell would be an immediate must-start flex, top 15, 20 play for this week. And speaking of guys not quite as widely owned, quite widely as available, but definitely needs to be even more so owned, Bo Scarborough. 43% owned, so decent chance he's not out there for you, but now gets 18 carries for 98 yards in the Week 12 loss to Washington. This now makes 49% and 51% of snaps in his first 2 active weeks compared to 29 and 36 for Ty Johnson, so nearly doubling the percent of snaps that Ty Johnson is out there. He's averaging 16 touches per game, Bo Scarborough is, and he's churning, shedding tackles, making defenders miss, averaging 5.4 yards per pop here, and ripped off a nice 30-yard gain at one point. He's that early down horse. He's that goal line weapon there as well. You got to imagine the touchdowns didn't come this week, but if you're getting 15 to 20 touches every single week in this offense that can move the ball with Driscoll, not great, but still getting some goal line chances, Bo Scarborough definitely is someone to check your waiver wire for. Make sure someone scooped him last week, and if not, I'd empty the tank. Solid couple matchups coming up beginning on Thanksgiving Day. I like Bo quite a lot, so check him out. Other than him, some other options. We just got the question from Giuseppe. Do I drop Jalen Samuels for Rashad Penny? 100% do not think twice. Do it now before it's too late. Penny coming off a monstrous effort as we previewed with the Chris Carson blurb. 14 carries, 129 yards, and 1 score. Ripping off humongous runs, including a 58-yard TD. Was definitely just churning against one of the best run defenses in the league. And Carson fumbles it away 2 times yet again. Obviously, Pete Carroll showing no remorse for this. The leash has to be short at this point on those fumbling issues. So Penny, again, Pete Carroll saying he's going to be, competition is a beautiful thing. We're going to get him involved early on. There's no reason not to get Rashad Penny going. So that's a guy at 19% owned, has to be towards the top of your waiver wire plans this week. A lot of people mentioned they streamed one of the best QB plays of the week. That's Ryan Tannehill. Fresh off, 35 plus fantasy points depending on your scoring. Meager passing totals, 259, 2 scores, but also gets 40 yards and 2 touchdowns on the ground for, again, whopping 35 plus fantasy points with the DraftKings play of the week this week. He's only 26% owned and has been getting it done every single week. He's now the QB4 since taking over as the starter. I don't know what else is left to say. He's mobile. He's getting the ball into his weapons' hands. They're making it happen after the catch. All they needed was someone that could just deliver the mail, and he's getting that done. Marcus Mariota sailing it over wide receivers' heads no longer. And one of the huge parts to why he's succeeding so much is A.J. Brown, only 16% owned, has 4 catches for a whopping 135 career-high yards, and also gets a score. A lot of that coming on a 65-yard catch-and-run touchdown. But we've seen that from A.J. Brown multiple times this year. He's big. He looks like a linebacker with those shoulder pads out there, but blazes down the field. He's compared a lot to Bolden, but it has more speed than he's ever had. Can make the contested catches, a big body, dangerous after the catch. It's such a low volume passing attack that's not like A.J. Brown is an every week staple. But man, the passing schedule they have for the rest of the year, Indy is getting up the 13th most points wide receivers, Oakland 6th, Houston 9th, and New Orleans 8th. So all juicy top 15 matchups coming up for A.J. Brown. Tannehill's schedule looks just as sexy. All 4 of those games, again, in nice passing game slates. If you're desperate at quarterback, if you're desperate at wide receiver, these would be the first 2 places I look based on the schedule, based on the results so far, and the upside if this rapport continues to develop. I love me some Tannehill and A.J. Brown. Now, if those guys aren't out there for you, you're looking for a desperate fill-in for at least 1 week, a nice stream could be Russell Gage. Gets a whopping 10 targets, 86 yards against the Bucks, a nice 16.6 in PPR. Yes, it was a joke matchup against Tampa Bay, and Julio Jones got dinged up for a bit of that game. But still, Gage highly active on those 55 pass attempts for your Falcons. The clear-cut number 3 wide receiver, maybe even number 2 now, with Hooper knocked out, with Freeman knocked out, and now maybe Jones potentially missing a week. New Orleans, as long as Lattimore's out there, has been getting destroyed in the secondary. And even if he comes back, you got to imagine whether that's on Julio or Ridley. If Julio sits, Gage will be the one feasting on P.J. Williams. You got yourself a nice, little fill-in here. In Carolina, the 11th most points wide receiver, so not a bad option if you get 2 weeks out of this Julio Jones injury. So something to monitor, something to check here. And last but not least, as I have to promote every single waiver wire check-in from here on out, it is handcuff season, folks. Cuffing season. Get in bed, find yourself the right person, that right 230-pound back to cuddle up with for the winter, because you're going to have some injuries down the stretch here, and you'll want to make sure you have your insurance policy, or you're the one beating everybody else when everyone else has to empty the wallets to get Alex Madison, Gus Edwards, whoever it might be. They're already sitting there on your bench. So let's go through just a couple quick ones. Alex Madison, still my top handcuff, 23% owned, but that playoff schedule, Detroit, most points to running backs, Chargers, 8th most points to running backs, and Green Bay, 5th most points to running backs. Complete juice bomb schedule. We know Dalvin Cook's injury history. He's looked a monster all year. I doubt he goes down, but still, it could rear its ugly head at the worst time for owners. And if it does, Madison is a low-end RB1, if not higher, with such a juicy schedule. Right behind him, I really like, we're talking about Rashad Penny. I'm not going to go back into him, but again, Carolina, Arizona, weeks 15 and 16. If the fumbles or an injury bug hits to Chris Carson again, you got that every down starter in the run-heaviest offense in the league. Penny, we just saw what he can do in serious volume. Tony Pollard, 12% owned, behind Zeke right now. Zeke's been an Iron Man, has never missed a game because of injury in his career, so that's probably the least likeliest to take over. But if he does, top offensive line, this offense moves the ball with ease, and Pollard has that receiving versatility, kind of a standalone role already there, would be a low-end RB1. So would Gus Edwards at 12% owned. The last time out there at 112 yards and a TD on only 8 carries. We'll see what happens tonight. If you have the ability to kind of just add a guy before the Monday night game kicks off and drop someone that you have for trash, pick him up and see if anything happens to Ingram tonight, because Edwards, within this run-heavy attack, within this Lamar Jackson juggernaut, would be an every week RB1. But the one other guy I want to make sure to mention as a handcuff, Darryl Williams for the Chiefs, only 6% owned. But Damian Williams, there's no real word yet what his rib injury is, how long it could last. But anytime he's missed times, weeks 3 through 4, we had 2 back-to-back top 15 RB weeks for Darryl Williams. And that was with McCoy scoring 3 touchdowns over those 2 weeks. Darryl Williams also was heavily involved, racked up 165 yards, 8 catches, and 2 scores over that 2-week span, and now gets Oakland in case Damian Williams sits. So that's another running back, Darryl Williams, widely out there that could be a difference maker for you. And last but not least, a question I get all the time, I wish I put this on the menu, because I think it could be a season winner for you folks. The Philly defense, only 36% owned, and listen to these matchups coming up. Miami, 2nd most points. New York Giants, 1st most points. And then Washington, 5th most points. Before Baltimore in Week 16, you'll find someone else for that. Those next 3 weeks, I wouldn't be shocked to see 12 to 15 points in every single one of those matchups for Philly, who's looked decent against the Seahawks, the Patriots, these tougher offenses. Now they're getting 3 of the biggest jokes in the league. Oh, God, I'm going all in on getting Philly in my roster if I haven't already. I've told you guys for weeks to stash these guys. If not them, the Jets, 22% owned, get Cincinnati and Miami in their next 2 weeks, even though Dalton's returning, since he's still a joke of a matchup. Let's get to your questions. I'm going to show you the injuries we're going to cover after it, but I want to hit all your questions first, and then we'll cover these injuries real quick. Is it okay to run Chubb and Hunt the rest of the season? I wouldn't prefer that, John, but I mean, ultimately in the right matchups, which they have a couple of those left on the calendar for the Browns, then yeah, because they're on the field so much together. It's a clear-cut receiving back versus early down and goal line back role. So you could. It's just got to be a Miami-style matchup when their offense is going to put up 30-plus points, and there is room, there is ground pie for both guys to feast and find the end zone. So it depends on who your guys are, what the matchups are. Could you do it? Yes. Most weeks, I'm probably not going to. I would all day. Fuck the Cowboys. I love it. Dylan, I got to watch the Cowboys get slapped around in New England in an awful fucking storm. But still, it was awesome to watch Dak just crap his pants. Drop Atlanta D for Jacksonville or New York Jets. Giuseppe, again, Philly's my first option. If not them, I do like the Jets facing Cincy. I don't know off the top of my head who the Jags have these next couple weeks. But to me, with the Cincy and Dolphins on deck for the Jets, that's where I would be leaning. The splits with and without D. Adams is staggering for Jones. The passing work tends to go to Jones without Adams. I think it's a really good point. I didn't consider Duck. I'm glad you brought that up. His biggest games have come without Adams in the lineup, and it seems like the offense just morphs into this weird. We got to force feed it to Adams. 12 targets for 40 yards this week, and it looks unnatural at times. So yeah, maybe they are better off without Adams right now. At least, of course, Jones's fantasy value. Intriguing stuff. Do I drop my handcuff in Madison for Penny? No, I wouldn't drop Madison. I'd rather stash him, although Penny does have some more standalone value if you need someone now. If it's just about stashing, though, to me, Madison is still the better play. But I would drop whoever you asked about, Giuseppe, last question for sure. What's up with Lockett? Asked Jeremiah. Is he dinged up? I'm not sure. The rare dud. We've gotten so used to this guy being a wide receiver one. I'll just chalk it up to Jalen Mills. I know the Eagles secondary was someone to target for so long, but since he came back from his injury, no one's allowed a lower passer rating when targeted. He's been one of the better pass coverage guys, locking down number one wide receivers these last few weeks. Mills has. So I'd say he was dinged up himself. Lockett, tough matchups against a surging Jalen Mills. I'm going to chalk it up to that. Benny, as says Duckworth, yes. This week, Josh Allen at Dallas Thursday and Brissett versus Titans. Thanks. Ooh, that's a tough one, Denny, because the Titans do seem like a juicier matchup. I got to go Allen, though. The rushing upside there. You get some nice Thanksgiving action. Give me Josh Allen. Danny Jennings, is Doyle a good pickup rest of season with Ebron on IR? Yeah. I mean, not bad. There's other guys I'd probably rather have at the position, but yeah, now going to be an every snap player. Dominates that position, the middle of the field, targets a little bit more red zone looks. I can see Doyle having a decent little stretch here with Ebron gone, and that kind of transitions nicely to our first note here. Eric Ebron is on the IR with an ankle injury ending his season. He's going to need surgery, I guess, on both ankles, is what Rappaport was one of the most obvious regression candidates of the year, fresh off leading the league in touchdowns for receiving last year. Still disappointing, very flaccid. 3 touchdowns, 375 yards, just meh. 11 just unusable for the most part experiences. So if you have tight end woes, I mean, Ryan Griffin was still out there. As Denny mentioned, Jack Doyle's only 33% owned. Daniel Fells getting dropped in a lot of leagues, deservedly so. He's a bag of shit. David Njoku, under 30% owned, and this offense finally seems to be humming. He's got himself a decent schedule down the stretch. So those are all options if you're needing an Ebron replacement plan or just having tight end woes in general. Another injury note to check, Tyreke Hill, they're optimistic he's going to play, and this is not a team that can just sit and rest on its laurels as they might have been able to last year. They're in some, really in the thick of a playoff spot, whether or not they're going to make it. And so if Tyreke Hill is available, he's going to be playing. He seems to heal fast. There's no real doctoral evidence or anything of that nature for such a statement, but ultimately, Hill does seem to get back on the field. It is a hamstring, so it could linger. That soft tissue stuff isn't great, but if they're optimistic, I imagine he's going to play. They're not going to rush back this stud. It does, limit McCole Hardman, who would be a decent stream in Hill's absence. He had 51 or 79% of the snaps, so 51 total snaps, 79% of them when Hill went out last week. So he would be an interesting pickup if Hill's injury lingers. But to me, you're going to probably have Tyreke Hill against Oakland. He's going to be maybe the number one wide receiver play in such a juicy spot. Speaking of Oakland, on the other side of that ball, Hunter Renfrow, disappointing for the guy that has finally been picking it up. Breaks a rib, punctures his lung, almost certain to miss the rest of the year. He had caught multiple passes in every week since the bye. In fact, he had been leading the team in terms of catches, in terms of targets, and receiving yardage since coming off the bye and really starting to establish himself. Now, wasn't much of a touchdown guy, but was a highly viable security blanket over the middle of the field. Now he's gone. Was again consistent PPR option. Who knows who's really going to fill in? I think to me, the targets, the yards, more so just filter back to Darren Waller, back to Darryl Williams. There hasn't really been anyone else consistent. Is it Dobbs? Is it, the running backs, maybe more Josh Jacobs? But I'm not expecting any other wide receiver to really step up into this role. To me, it just gets disseminated to the other people around him. Another slot receiver, a bigger name, getting knocked out this week now in concussion protocol. That's Golden Tate. He's in the league's concussion protocol right now, and he was injured on a fourth touchdown, which came in between a couple defenders, and just it's a brutal timing. They get Sterling Shepard back. He looks okay, but to me, it's going to mean Darius Slayton still 25% owned right now. Gets another week or two of usability. The Giants' schedule moving forward, very juicy. Green Bay, 22nd, so not the most inviting matchup, but not something to shy away from. And then Philly, Miami, Washington for those last three playoff weeks. A great schedule, so Slayton leading the team in receiving yards this last week. If Golden Tate misses time, right back in your lineup. Sterling Shepard saw a team high in targets, a very low upside targets. I think he averaged under 5 yards a catch, but still a guy that could get back in the lineups if Golden Tate does miss any time. Just a quick update on Mac. Will not be back this week. Already confirmed out. I'm still stashing him if I'm a playoff-minded owner. Just even if for nothing else, that Week 16 matchup against the Panthers, worst team in DVOA for the run, could be a blow-up spot for Mac. I get it. You have to make it to the dance. It's tough to burn a roster spot to get all the way there with Marlon Mack just eating up space on your roster, but could be a season-long stretch run hero. Tough matchups against Tampa Bay and New Orleans in those first two playoff weeks. So if he rests and sits, all the better. Get him fully healthy for that last Week 16 juice bomb spot. Worth the roster spot, in my opinion, to stash him. Last but not least, just because everybody needs to hear the latest on the Cardinals' fucking shitstorm, Chase Edmunds back in practice and expected to play this week. Who knows what in the holy hell is going to happen in this situation? Is David Johnson going to reemerge at all? Probably not. Kenyon Drake, 22 carries, all the backfield touches in the last week. David Johnson, 9 snaps, 0 touches. Looks like a slug. It's hideous. So in my advice to Week 13, maybe Drake can be in your lineups. He does seem like the lead horse. But you can't have Edmunds, you can't have David Johnson until you see how this all shakes out. And even Drake could be a big risk in case Johnson looks healthy to give it back to him. Really tough just overall season for him. Alrighty, folks, we covered handcuffs, we covered injuries, we covered waiver wire, all your risers and fallers. The rest of the time is meant for your questions, your sit starts. So get them on in. Let me know how I can help you out, even if it's about life in general. Get the Wolf's wisdom here for the rest of the show, folks. Jeremiah Moore, what are the odds that Baltimore shuts out LA tonight? I'm up by 2 points and my opponent has the Rams kicker. I wouldn't be, low. All you need is one field goal for you to lose there. But if they get up big early and they have to abandon the field goal game, I wouldn't be shocked. It's not impossible, but pretty unlikely, Jeremiah. I wouldn't have too high of hopes. I'd set you at a 5% chance here. Would you drop Dak for Tannehill or Baker? Lamar is my starter. I just wouldn't want to drop Dak. And then, I know I just raved about how bad his schedule is, Patrick. Even still, he could have the talent to supersede that. This was the Patriots in a rainstorm. You wouldn't want to drop Dak and then just watch him have a field day against the rest of your league. To me, you're not. You're trying to block your opponent essentially because you have Lamar as your starter. I'd rather be blocking them from a Dak than I would from Tannehill or Baker. Dylan Russell only had 13 completions spread out. There's fed Penny. He's good to go. True. You talk about Lockett, I imagine there, Dylan. Totally. I love that you guys are all interacting with each other, too. It means the world to watch the pack grow. We're going to have our own little forum someday, guys. Would you add Lewis backup Henry? Nah. I imagine they'd sign a bigger back or call someone off the practice squad if anything happened to Henry. I don't imagine it's the Dion Lewis show, so no. There's higher upside guys I'd rather own. Some of those other handcuffs I talked about. Daniel, Eagles or Bears defense? In all honesty, with those matchups, it's to me looking like the Eagles. The Bears have one of the toughest slates, a lot of big explosive offenses, a much better team, much better talents, but that's where I'm leaning. Eagles D or Pittsburgh D for the rest of the season? I got to go Pittsburgh there, Giuseppe. I know I raved about the Eagles, but Pittsburgh, the one defense that has almost as good of matchups and is better in terms of the points they're getting almost every single week. I love that Pittsburgh D. They're one of the best units you can possibly own here. Saquon's trash, biggest bust. I wouldn't call the guy trash, but he's definitely dinged up right now, Jeremiah. The team around him is certainly trash. He looks like shit right now. Granted, I had both Kamara and McCaffrey ahead of him. I wish I could say I had McCaffrey at the top. I did not. I had Alvin, but I did have McCaffrey over Saquon. So if you were listening to me, you would have had him on your squad at number 2. Sorry though, dealing with a bust like that. I have 22 left, so trying to pick up Penny, Snell, and Cleveland. Where should I spend my money? I would try to get Penny first and then Snell. I would drop a solid like 16, 17 to get Penny because he could end up taking over that backfield with a couple nice stretch run schedule matchups here. Only wide receiver on the bench is Conley. Others can't drop. Should I drop Conley for Penny? Yeah, Conley's useless. What the fuck do you need to own him for, Giuseppe? Yeah, get rid of him. No need to own him. Of the other RBs, I would say you could probably drop. Is Miles Sanders ever going to fucking do anything at this point? He had 2 weeks without Howard and still was a very mediocre at best. So you could drop Sanders. Yeah, Cohen's meh. But Conley still, I would drop him over any of those other guys. The wisdom of the wolf, yes. Lager or Guinness tonight, asked Denny. I'm a big Guinness fan, my friend. Not as chuggable, but I love chugging a good Guinness still, though. I shouldn't call it non-chuggable. Pound those. Get a little tequila. Drop a little car bomb in there, right? A little Bailey's. I love a good Irish car bomb, Denny Jennings. Have Kyler and Winston. Should I drop either for Tannehill? And if not, who do I start this week? I wouldn't drop either of those guys for Tannehill. I don't know off the top of my head. I haven't really looked at the matchups. I do my rankings tomorrow, as a lot of you guys know, 5:30 p.m. live on the show here. We'll be live broadcasting my rankings. Off the top of my head, though, I can't imagine I'd have Kyler above. I'd have Tannehill above either Kyler or Winston. I get he's balling out. It's still Tannehill, though. As soon as we get comfortable with him, he's going to crap himself. So my guess is no, but who knows? I got to know the matchups before I can confidently say that. I do know he's got the Colts, and that's the 13th most points to quarterbacks right there, so not a bad matchup for Tannehill. But I imagine Kyler or Winston, I'd lean to either of those guys. Drop Tyrell Williams for Penny or Snell. I would keep Tyrell, Patrick. Again, with Renfro now banged up, and this guy's been balling out pretty decently throughout the year. A couple duds, but a lot of touchdowns, a lot of big plays, and now more targets coming his way. I'd be keeping Tyrell Williams myself. Start 2, Baker, Winston, or Josh Allen. Most likely going to go Baker and Winston there. The matchup against Dallas, not the easiest for Josh Allen. Baker's got Pittsburgh, so not the greatest matchup either, but had 20 points against him last time, back-to-back 20-point days. Seems to be getting on track. And then Winston, just 300 yards, 2 to 3 touchdowns, even if he's going to throw you 3 picks, seems every week. Aaron Rodgers should be dropped in redraft leagues for Darnold or Tannehill going into the playoffs. Changing my mind. Not changing your mind, Mateo. You know my feelings on Rodgers. I think he's a complete bag of ass. The only thing I would caution is he does get the Giants, and he does get Washington in his next 2 weeks. Then I would cut his ass because 15 and 16 are really tough-ass matchups. But if you really wanted Darnold, against Cincy, against Miami these next 2 weeks, and he's fresh off 3 straight 22-plus point days, go for it. Like, totally into that. See you tomorrow, Wolf. Got to get ready for kick for the Ravens. Throw a fake for it in. Yeah, totally with you. I gotta avoid tonight. 25 points from Lamar. I've got Cooper, Kupp, and a 25-point lead against Lamar Jackson, and I hate to say it, I don't feel all that comfortable. Of course, I played against Godwin. Yeah, isn't it with one guy? I have Godwin, thank God, my savior this week so far. The only reason I'm even in this battle, I got to avoid, again, 25 plus whatever Kupp does versus Lamar Jackson is who I'm facing. So I'm terrified. I'm still shitting bricks. Big matchup coming up for the Wolf tonight. All of you guys tuned in, thanks so much. I appreciate it. Mondays have been, you guys make Monday all that much better because I get to do this show right into Monday Night Football, and it's made the season to interact with all you guys, to build the pack like we have been. Y'all the best. Check out our app if you haven't already, Roto Street Journal or RSJ in your app store. The cleanest way to consume all our content, all our stock watches. We'll have even more than what I covered on the show tonight. And I'll be back live tomorrow, 5:30 p.m. Eastern Time, to give you that rankings rundown, to get through everybody you need to sit, start, and all your Hail Marys out there. Just a couple last minute questions. Eric, great to see you too. You have a great night, as well, brother. You as well, Denny. Peace out, Wolfpack. Pollard definitely worth a stash though, Giuseppe. In case anything, Zeke's an Iron Man, but if you're heading into your playoffs and you want to just see if something ever happens, he'd be a true RB1. So if you got that bench trash, cut it for him. Thanks again, guys. Much appreciated, Wolfpack. We'll see you tomorrow, 5:30 p.m. Eastern Time, live for the rankings rundown. Till then, best of luck, folks. Whatever you need on Monday night, I hope it comes true for you. Get the app.